They left the alien woman staked in the ASH field. One human walked out at dawn. Why was she left there? And why would one human choose to walk toward her when everyone else had walked away? What could make that single decision matter? Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Before we begin, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another journey into the unknown. Your continued support means more than you know, and thank you for spending your time with us and helping this community grow. Before the story begins, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from, and what time is it there right now? We always love seeing how far these stories travel. Now settle in, stay with us, and keep your eyes on the horizon. Let us begin the story. Do not tell me that as a person. Jack Callahan whispered the words to nobody, because at 5:17 in the morning the geothermal control room was empty except for him, the machinery, and a shape that should not have been moving in the ash field. He leaned closer to the reinforced window. Beyond the glass, Cinder Reach was waking beneath a bruised red horizon. Black ash rolled across the ground in long, whispering sheets, driven by a wind that made the station walls hum. 3 miles of geothermal pipes disappeared into that darkness, their warning lights blinking like embers. Jack had been watching pressure numbers when something moved between two intake towers. Once, then again. He wiped condensation from the glass with his sleeve. Come on. The shape remained nearly half a mile away, barely distinguishable from the old maintenance markers scattered across the field. Jack reached for the exterior scanner. Temperature, 26 degrees Fahrenheit. Air quality, hazardous without filtration. Wind, 31 miles per hour. Visibility, poor. Registered personnel outside perimeter, 0. Jack frowned. Machines were excellent at being certain about things they were wrong about. He increased magnification. The image sharpened through drifting ash. A vertical post appeared first, an obsolete signal stake left from the colony's original construction. Beside it was a figure. No, not beside it. Attached to it somehow, held upright by a restraint harness around the torso. Jack's hand stopped over the controls. The figure lifted her head. Even through the dirty image, he saw the reflection of silver eyes. Alien. Female. Alive. What in God's name? He checked the personnel registry again. Nothing. No maintenance crew. No survey team. No authorized exterior activity until 7. He switched to thermal imaging. The screen painted the field in layers of blue and gray. The geothermal vents burned orange beneath the ground. The figure near the stake showed a weak but unmistakable heat signature. Jack felt the coffee in his stomach turn cold. Somebody had left her there. The thought arrived before he could find a kinder explanation. He opened the emergency channel. Control to exterior operations. I have an unidentified individual in Sector 4. Static answered. Night shift communications had already transferred to morning automation. Jack tried security. No response. He looked through the window again. The alien woman had lowered her head. Ash gathered across her shoulders and dark hair, sliding over deep teal-blue skin whenever the wind shifted. Her clothing looked designed for warmer conditions, not an exposed field before sunrise. Jack grabbed his thermal coat from the chair. Then he stopped. Procedure said wait for security. Procedure said never enter the ash field alone. Procedure had been written by people sitting somewhere warm. He pulled the coat on. From the equipment cabinet, he took a respirator, spare filter, insulated water pouch, emergency blanket, carbon line, and portable beacon. His hands moved with the practiced rhythm of a man who had spent 15 years repairing problems everyone else preferred to discuss first. At the outer airlock, the access panel flashed red. Exterior conditions unsafe. Jack entered his authorization. The warning appeared again. I read it the first time. He overrode the lock. Before opening the door, he glanced through the narrow window toward the distant figure. For 1 second, the blowing ash cleared. The alien woman raised her face toward the station, and Jack saw those silver eyes catch the first line of dawn. She was looking directly at him. Not waving. Not calling. Just watching, as if she had already learned nobody was coming. The airlock unlocked with a heavy metallic click. Jack fitted the respirator over his face. Yeah, he murmured, reaching for the door. We are going to have a disagreement about that. Jack had taken exactly 3 steps toward the outer door when a voice behind him said, Do not go out there. He turned. Marcus Reed, the morning systems supervisor, stood at the inner airlock wearing half-zipped coveralls and the expression of a man who had arrived expecting coffee and found trouble instead. Two technicians followed him into the corridor. Jack pointed through the narrow window. "There is someone in Sector 4. "I know." The answer stopped him colder than the air beyond the door. "You know?" Marcus looked toward the distant figure and tightened his jaw. "She was brought out before shift change." Jack waited for the rest. It did not come, and nobody thought the important part of that sentence was bringing her back. One technician lowered her eyes. Marcus stepped closer. "Her name is Soraya Vale. Vayari. This is not colony business. She is standing in colony territory. It is a Vayari disciplinary matter." Jack looked through the glass again. Ash swept across the field, briefly hiding Soraya from view. 26 degrees outside. Her species handles temperature differently, not according to that thermal reading. Marcus exhaled slowly. "Jack, listen to me. The Vayari delegation specifically instructed station personnel not to interfere. That is an interesting instruction. It is also attached to our extraction contract." There it was. Not danger. Not quarantine. Money. Jack adjusted the emergency pack across his shoulder. "Move." Marcus did not. "You could lose your exterior authorization. Then this might be my last chance to use it. You do not know what she did." Jack's hand settled on the airlock control. "That was not what I asked." Marcus stared at him. "What did you ask?" "Whether somebody was alive out there." The corridor fell quiet except for the steady pulse of ventilation fans. Marcus lowered his voice. "The Vayari have their own laws. So do we. This station survives because humans and Vayari stay out of each other's internal affairs. Great policy until internal affairs are freezing half a mile from my heater." The younger technician glanced toward the window. "She has been there since before midnight." Jack turned sharply. "How long?" The technician swallowed. "About 6 hours." Marcus gave her a warning look, but the information was already loose in the room. 6 hours. Jack imagined 6 hours of black ash striking exposed skin, 6 hours watching warm station lights through darkness, 6 hours learning exactly how many people could see you and choose not to move. Something inside him became very quiet. He checked his respirator seal. Marcus finally stepped aside. "If you cross that line, I cannot protect your job." Jack looked at him. "I repair geothermal pumps for a living, Marcus. I was never under the impression my job needed protecting from acts of kindness." He opened the outer lock. Cold air rushed into the chamber with the dry mineral smell of heated stone and sulfur. Warning lights flashed amber above him. The technicians backed away. Marcus remained at the threshold. "Jack." Jack paused. "She might refuse your help. Then she refuses. And if she tells you to leave?" Jack looked toward the ash. Soraya's silhouette had appeared again between the moving curtains of black dust. Then at least somebody walked out there and asked. The outer door opened fully. Wind struck his coat and rattled the respirator against his face. Jack clipped the carbon safety line to his belt, tested the portable beacon, and stepped beyond the station wall. Warm ash shifted beneath his boots, strangely soft over the frozen ground. Behind him, the settlement glowed gold against the dawn. Ahead, Soraya stood alone beneath a red sky. Jack took another step, then another. Through the blowing ash, her silver eyes lifted toward him again. This time he was close enough to see something in them that the scanner could never have measured. She was not surprised that everyone else had stayed inside. She was surprised that one person had not. By the time Jack had crossed the first 100 yards, Cinder Reach no longer felt like a settlement behind him. It felt like another planet. The station lights faded into the blowing ash, and the wind filled his respirator with a steady mechanical hiss. Every breath tasted faintly of hot metal and sulfur despite the filter. The ground beneath his boots was deceptive, a warm layer of powder covering stone cold enough to stiffen his soles. He kept his eyes on Soraya. The distance between them shortened slowly. 400 yards. 300. At 200, he could finally see her clearly without magnification. Deep teal-blue skin showed beneath streaks of black ash. Dark hair had been pulled loose by the wind. Her silver eyes remained fixed on him with an intensity that made him feel less like a rescuer and more like an unexplained problem. Jack raised one gloved hand. Soraya did not respond. "Good morning," he called through the respirator speaker. The wind carried half the words away. Terrible location for a sunrise. Her expression did not change. Jack continued forward. At 50 feet, she finally spoke. "Stop." He did. Her voice was weak but controlled. You should return to the station. Jack glanced behind him. The station was now a dim gold shape through the ash. I just got here. Then your mistake remains reversible. That is encouraging. Soraya studied him. You know who I am? Soraya Vale. Something shifted in her face. Then you know why I am here. Actually, everybody became strangely unhelpful around that part. It does not matter. Seems like it matters to you. She looked away. Jack moved closer, slowly enough that she could object. At 10 feet, he saw the restraint system clearly. It was not crude. A Vayari field harness secured her to the old signal stake through a locking mechanism at her back, apparently designed to prevent unauthorized removal without causing injury. Efficient, formal, almost polite. Somehow that made Jack dislike it more. He set his emergency pack on the ground. Soraya's eyes followed every movement. What are you doing? Checking whether you can get out of that thing. Do not. Jack paused. You want to stay? I want you uninvolved. Different question. Her jaw tightened. Your people have been warned. My people warn me about caffeine too. This is not humor. No. Humor is usually funnier. For the first time, something almost human crossed her expression, irritation. Jack preferred it to resignation. He crouched beside the locking assembly without touching it. The mechanism displayed 3 blue status lights and a Vayari authorization seal. Can this be opened safely? He asked. Soraya hesitated. Yes. Good. I did not give you permission. Jack looked up at her. Ash moved between them like dark snow. Then I will not touch it. That surprised her more than anything else he had done. Jack opened his pack instead. He removed the insulated water pouch and placed it where she could reach if she chose. Then he unfolded the thermal blanket and set it beside the water. What is this? She asked. Water. Blanket. Humanity's greatest technological achievements after duct tape. You crossed the field to leave supplies? I crossed because someone was outside and whether nobody should be standing in. Soraya stared at him. You still do not know what I did. Jack checked the temperature reading on his wrist. 25 degrees. Wind increasing. He looked at the ash gathered along her shoulders, then at the faint turquoise markings near her temples, their glow noticeably dimmer than it should have been. He had expected anger, accusation, maybe some dramatic demand for an explanation. Instead, one practical question pushed everything else aside. Soraya, he said quietly, are you cold? Her silver eyes widened. For several seconds, she said nothing. The wind pulled at Jack's coat and whispered across the empty field. When she finally answered, the discipline in her voice had cracked by only the smallest amount. Yes. Jack nodded once. All right. He picked up his tools. Then, that is the first problem we solve. Jack did not touch the lock until Soraya gave him permission. That took nearly a minute. He spent the silence kneeling in warm ash, examining the Vayari mechanism while the wind pushed against his back. 3 blue indicators pulsed beneath a transparent cover. No visible damage. No emergency release marked in any language he recognized. I can probably open it, he said. Probably is not reassuring. It is more honest than definitely. Soraya looked toward the distant station. If you release me, there will be consequences. There are consequences if I leave you here too. Those consequences belong to me. Jack lifted his eyes. Cold does not care whose paperwork it belongs to. Her silver gaze remained on him. Finally, she said, the lower panel. Press the 2 outer controls together, then rotate the center ring clockwise. Jack followed her instructions. The mechanism chimed softly. Authorization required, Soraya said. Of course it is. He studied the panel. Does it have a maintenance bypass? Why would you assume that? Because everything complicated eventually needs somebody with a toolbox. She almost smiled. Almost. Jack removed a narrow diagnostic lead from his kit and connected it to the service port beneath the panel. Vayari symbols appeared across his handheld reader. He recognized power, status, and something that looked suspiciously like technician access. Different alphabet, he murmured. Same bad habit of hiding useful controls. You understand Vayari systems? I understand engineers. He isolated the locking circuit and reduced power until the blue indicators faded one by one. The harness released with a quiet click. Jack immediately stepped back. Your decision now. Soraya stared at the open restraint as though freedom itself had become unfamiliar. She moved one hand, then the other. When she tried to step away from the post, her knees weakened. Jack instinctively reached forward but stopped before touching her. May I? Her pride fought the question longer than her strength could. Then she nodded. Jack caught her forearm and steadied her. Her skin felt cool even through his glove. Easy. I do not require carrying. Excellent. I was hoping to avoid demonstrating how bad my back is. Soraya straightened. You make jokes at inappropriate times. Appropriate times rarely need them. He wrapped the thermal blanket around her shoulders, then handed her the water pouch. She drank carefully, never taking her eyes from him. Why? She asked. Jack checked the station beacon. Half a mile back through worsening ash. Why what? Why did you come? We covered this. No. You told me I was cold. You were. That explains why I needed help. It does not explain why you decided to give it. Jack looked toward the station lights. Through the moving darkness, several silhouettes were visible behind the observation windows. People watching. Nobody walking toward them. I saw you, he said. Soraya waited. Jack shrugged beneath his coat. That was enough. Her expression changed so subtly he might have missed it if he had not been standing 3 feet away. Not gratitude. Not yet. Something closer to disbelief. You should return without me, she said. Your people may forgive curiosity. You think that is what this is? What else? Jack clipped the emergency line to his belt and offered the other end rather than attaching it to her himself. You can walk back with me, or you can stay here with water and the blanket while I call somebody else. I am not making the choice for you. Soraya looked at the line. And if I choose to walk? Then we walk. They may not let me inside. Jack glanced at the geothermal station he had spent 7 years keeping alive through dust storms, pressure failures, and management decisions that made less sense than either. Then they can explain that to the technician who controls their morning heat. Soraya finally took the line. Jack turned toward Cinder Reach. After 2 steps, he heard her following. He shortened his pace without mentioning it. The sunrise climbed behind them, painting the ash field copper and red. For the first time that morning, Soraya was no longer standing where others had decided she belonged. She was choosing the direction of her own footsteps. The first 100 yards back toward Cinder Reach told Jack more about Soraya than every warning inside the station had. She never complained. That worried him. People who still had energy usually complained about something, especially weather that tasted like burned pennies and found its way into every seam of a coat. Soraya simply walked, one measured step after another, the silver thermal blanket gathered around her shoulders. Jack kept the emergency line loose between them. It was not a leash. He wanted that distinction visible. How are your hands? He asked. Functional. That sounds suspiciously like an engineer answering a medical question. I am not an engineer. Then you have fewer excuses. Her silver eyes shifted toward him. You speak constantly. Keeps the ash from getting lonely. The faintest movement touched the corner of her mouth before disappearing. They continued. 200 yards from the station, Soraya's pace shortened. Jack noticed because he had been counting her steps against his own. He slowed without saying anything. She noticed that too. You do not need to match me. I am enjoying the scenery. There is ash in every direction. Very consistent scenery. Another gust crossed the field. Soraya turned her face away. Jack moved slightly upwind, letting his broader frame take some of it. He did not think about the gesture until he realized she was staring at him. What? Nothing. That sounded like something. Your species performs many inefficient actions without discussion. Jack considered that. We discuss plenty, usually after the inefficient part. The station grew larger ahead, its exterior lights fading as sunrise spread copper across the field. Jack could now see figures behind the observation windows. Nobody had come outside. Soraya saw them too. Her steps stopped. The emergency line became gently taut. Jack turned. What is it? I should not enter. You walked almost half a mile to reach the door. That does not mean the door will open. Jack looked toward the station, then back at her. You worried about them refusing you? I am worried about what happens to you if they do not. Her voice was steady, but something underneath it had changed. Return alone. Say I refused assistance. Jack stared at her for a moment. You want me to lie? I want you to keep your position. I have had better jobs. You have maintained this station for 7 years. Jack blinked. You know that. Your maintenance record is attached to every geothermal certification report. Great. My most devoted reader. I am serious. So am I. He stepped closer, keeping enough distance that she never had to retreat. You do not get rescued halfway. Soraya's eyes hardened. I did not ask to be rescued. Correct. Jack unclipped the carbon line from his belt and placed the loose end in her hand. So let us call this something else. What? Walking somewhere warmer. She looked down at the line. And if they refuse? Jack glanced toward the airlock. Marcus was visible behind the glass now. Then we learned something useful about them. Soraya remained still. Jack did not pull. He simply waited. Eventually she took one step. Then another. They reached the outer airlock together. Marcus opened the door before Jack touched the panel. Warm, filtered air rolled outward. Soraya stopped at the threshold as if an invisible wall remained there. Jack stepped inside first, removed his respirator, and looked back. Your choice. Her silver eyes moved from him to the people waiting beyond the inner door. Then she crossed the threshold. The airlock sealed behind them. Jack heard Soraya exhale, long and quiet. Marcus folded his arms. The Vayari delegation is already asking questions. Jack removed his ash-covered gloves. They can get in line. Jack, this is serious. I know. He looked at Soraya. Black dust covered her dark hair and teal-blue skin, but warmth was slowly returning to the turquoise markings near her temples. That is why I went outside. Marcus said nothing. Jack picked up the emergency blanket where it had slipped from Soraya's shoulder and handed it back to her. Then he nodded toward the maintenance corridor. Come on. My workshop has heat, water, and coffee. Soraya regarded him cautiously. Do Vayari drink coffee? He added. No. Smart species. For the first time since Jack had seen her standing alone in the ash, Soraya smiled. The workshop door closed behind them, and for the first time that morning the ash field became only a sound. Wind whispered against the reinforced walls while geothermal pumps sent a low mechanical heartbeat through the floor. Jack turned the heater up 3 degrees, ignoring the station efficiency warning that immediately appeared on his console. Apparently comfort is financially irresponsible, he said. Soraya stood near the doorway, still wrapped in the silver emergency blanket. Black ash dusted her dark hair and deep teal-blue skin, while the turquoise markings near her temples remained dim. She looked around the workshop as if uncertain whether she had entered a shelter or another kind of test. Jack pointed toward an old padded chair beside the heater. Sit wherever you want. I can stand. I believe you. He filled a metal cup with warm water and placed it on the workbench within her reach. Then he noticed the respirator hanging from her equipment belt. One side of its filtration housing was dark. May I see that? Soraya touched the device protectively. It is damaged. That is usually when people bring things into my workshop. After a moment, she handed it over. Jack rotated the respirator beneath the overhead light. Fine ash had entered through a cracked intake seal. The internal filter was clogged, but the regulator remained intact. This can be repaired. Soraya looked at him. No, that was unexpectedly pessimistic. Vayari field respirators are sealed units. Damaged equipment is replaced. Jack opened a drawer and selected a narrow driver. That sounds expensive. It is efficient. Those words are not always friends. He removed the housing screws and carefully separated the filter assembly. Soraya moved closer despite herself. Jack noticed but said nothing. He cleaned the regulator, replaced the damaged seal with a heat-resistant gasket, then trimmed the edge until it fitted perfectly. You carry replacement components for Vayari equipment? She asked. No. Then what is that? A gasket from an American-made coolant pump. Soraya stared at him. You are repairing advanced Vayari respiratory technology with a pump seal. Please do not tell the respirator. It might become self-conscious. A quiet sound escaped her. Jack looked up. Was that another smile? Her expression immediately became formal. No. Good. I would hate to damage your reputation. He returned to work. After several minutes, the respirator powered on. 3 green indicators appeared. Jack placed it on the bench between them rather than handing it directly to her. Try it. Soraya tested the airflow. Her silver eyes widened slightly. It functions. You sound disappointed. I am surprised. Much better. She studied the repaired device. Why repair something designed to be replaced? Jack leaned against the bench. Because broken and useless are not the same thing. The words left his mouth casually. Soraya became very still. Jack noticed the silence, but misunderstood it. What? Nothing. She looked down at the respirator. Your people believe this? Some do. Some throw away perfectly good coffee makers because a switch stops working. You are speaking about machines. Mostly. Soraya wrapped both hands around the warm cup. Color was returning slowly to the markings at her temples. Among the Vayari, failure reduces value. Jack looked at her, then at the repaired respirator. Sounds like a rough way to live. It prevents weakness from spreading. Does it? Soraya lifted her eyes. The question had landed somewhere deeper than he intended. Jack did not push. Instead, he returned the tools to their drawer. Outside the workshop window, morning light spread across Cinder Reach, turning the drifting ash bronze. You have not asked what I did, Soraya said. Jack closed the drawer. Not yet. Everyone else did. I am sure they will eventually send me the paperwork. Does the answer not matter? Jack considered her carefully. It matters if I am deciding whether to trust you. He nodded toward the heater, the water, and the repaired respirator. It does not matter if I am deciding whether you deserve to be warm. Soraya lowered her gaze to the cup. The workshop settled into silence again, filled only by humming pumps and the soft click of cooling metal. Jack turned toward his console, giving her the privacy of not being watched. Behind him, Soraya touched the repaired respirator as though it had become something more than equipment. Perhaps, Jack thought, some things needed fixing before anyone bothered asking whether they were worth the trouble. Jack had just finished recalibrating the workshop heater when the door indicator changed from green to amber. Someone had requested entry. Soraya noticed the light before he did. The warmth that had slowly returned to her expression disappeared. Jack looked at the security display. 3 Vayari officials waited in the corridor, accompanied by Marcus. Their uniforms were immaculate enough to make Jack suddenly aware of the ash still covering his coat. Friends of yours? He asked. No. Soraya set the metal cup down carefully. They are here for me. Jack glanced at her. That was fast. You should open the door. You sound like you do not want me to. What I want is irrelevant. Jack faced her fully. You are going to have to stop saying things like that around me. Her silver eyes narrowed. Jack! Soraya, if you interfere further, they may terminate your contract. Marcus already gave me the exciting preview. Then you understand. I understand somebody thinks employment is a useful substitute for morality. The entry signal sounded again. Soraya stood. Her posture became formal, almost rigid, as if some invisible uniform had settled over her shoulders. Open it. Tell them I entered without permission. Jack stared at her. That would be a lie. It would protect you. From losing a job? From consequences you did not choose. Jack leaned against the workbench. I walked half a mile into an ash storm. I am pretty sure choice was involved. Soraya stepped closer. You do not understand Vayari discipline. True. You do not understand what I did. Also true. Then why continue? Jack looked at the repaired respirator beside her. Because those are separate questions. They are not separate to my people. Maybe that is the problem. Silence settled between them. The geothermal pumps hummed beneath the floor, steady and warm. Soraya looked toward the door. Among the Vayari, usefulness is tied to trust. When trust fails, the individual becomes a risk to the whole. Jack folded his arms. And leaving someone outside fixes that. It demonstrates that the whole survives without the individual. Machines work like that. Exactly. People are not machines. Soraya's gaze returned to him. Your workshop suggests you disagree. You repair everything. Jack smiled faintly. I repair machines because they cannot decide what happens next. He nodded toward her. People can. The amber indicator flashed again. This time Marcus spoke through the intercom. Jack, they have authority from station administration. Jack pressed the communication switch. Then administration can wait 30 seconds. Marcus sighed loudly enough for the speaker to catch it. Jack released the switch. Soraya looked almost offended. You made officials wait. I have made governors wait because a pump was overheating. Were you always this difficult? My mother has documentation. A small warmth returned to Soraya's eyes, but vanished quickly. You should know something before that door opens. If they cancel your contract, there may be no appeal. Jack looked around the workshop. 7 years of his life lived in the scratches across the benches, handwritten labels on storage cabinets, and coffee stains beside diagnostic screens. Losing it would matter. Pretending otherwise would be dishonest. He felt the weight of that possibility settle quietly in his chest. I like this place, he said. I know. I like getting paid even more. Soraya waited. Jack straightened. But neither one changes whether you deserved water this morning. Her expression softened. You keep returning to that. Simple questions are useful when everyone else makes things complicated. Soraya looked at him for several seconds. And what happens when the questions stop being simple? Jack reached for the door control. Then I start asking better ones. The workshop door slid open. Marcus entered first. Behind him stood the three Veari officials, their pale ceremonial coats untouched by ash. The tallest official looked past Jack directly at Soraya. Soraya Vale, you are required to return with us. Jack did not move between them. He did not raise his voice. He simply stood beside the workbench while Soraya remained free to choose her own position. The official turned toward him. Human, your interference ends now. Jack glanced at Soraya. She looked calm, but her fingers had closed around the repaired respirator. Something about that small gesture stayed with him. Broken and useless were not the same thing. Neither, perhaps, were condemned and guilty. Jack looked back at the official. Before anybody goes anywhere, he said, I think it is finally time someone tells me what she actually did. The tallest Veari official did not answer Jack immediately. His silver-gray eyes moved across the workshop as though everything inside it, from the stained workbench to the humming heater, existed several levels beneath his attention. Soraya Vale violated navigation command protocol, he finally said. Jack waited. That sounds impressive. What does it mean? The official's expression tightened. She refused certification of an authorized geothermal expansion route. Soraya remained silent beside the bench. Jack glanced toward her. You refused to sign something? I refused to certify data I believed was incorrect, she said. The official turned sharply. Your belief was not requested. Jack felt the room change around those words. Marcus shifted near the doorway. Even the other Veari officials avoided looking directly at Soraya. Jack folded his arms. What data? Soraya looked at him. Subsurface pressure projections beneath extraction Zone 12. Jack knew Zone 12. Everyone maintaining Cinder Reach knew it. The new expansion was supposed to double geothermal output before winter. Hundreds of workers would eventually rotate through the site. What was wrong with the projections? He asked. That matter has been reviewed, the official said. Jack kept his eyes on Soraya. I asked her. A pause followed. Then Soraya answered. The model assumes stable thermal migration beneath the eastern shelf. My readings showed movement outside the projected pattern. How far outside? Enough that I would not approve human or Veari crews entering the zone. Jack's attention sharpened. This was no longer an abstract dispute between cultures. He had spent 15 years listening to machinery complain before instruments admitted anything was wrong. Numbers could be inconvenient. Pressure did not care. And they left you outside because you refused to sign? He asked. She rejected lawful command. The official replied. There were consequences. Jack looked toward Marcus. Our contract depends on Zone 12, does it not? Marcus hesitated. A significant portion of it. There was the second uncomfortable answer of the morning. Soraya stepped forward. This is why you must stop. Jack turned toward her. Because money is involved. Because your entire station is involved. Your employment. Their employment. Supply agreements. Energy quotas. I will not make strangers pay for my decision. You did not drag me into anything. You walked into it. Yeah, I have a habit. Her eyes hardened. Then break it. The words were sharper than anything she had said to him, but Jack heard what lived underneath them. She was trying to send him away before kindness became expensive. The realization bothered him more than the officials did. Soraya, he said quietly, if you want to leave with them, I will not stop you. Her expression changed. But do not leave because you think you owe me my job. The Veari official stepped forward. This discussion is concluded. Jack raised one finger without looking at him. Almost. The official stared at the finger as if humans had invented a new diplomatic insult. Jack turned back to Soraya. Do you have your original readings? She hesitated. Yes. Where? My field recorder. Still functional? Her hand tightened around the repaired respirator. I believe so. Jack nodded toward his diagnostic console. Then let me see them. Soraya studied him carefully. If the data proves I was wrong, then you were wrong. And you will hand me over? Jack shook his head. I will tell you the truth. What you do after that remains your choice. And if I was right? Jack looked past her toward the officials. Then we have a much bigger maintenance problem. The tallest Veari spoke coldly. Human, you are not authorized to evaluate Veari navigation models. Jack finally faced him. No. He rested one hand on the scarred workbench. But I am authorized to evaluate every geothermal system connected to this station. Marcus closed his eyes briefly, already understanding where this was going. Jack pulled an interface cable from the console and placed it beside Soraya. Your call. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then Soraya crossed the workshop, removed a slim field recorder from her belt, and set it beside the cable. Her silver eyes met Jack's. You wanted better questions. Jack connected the recorder. The first pressure graphs appeared across the screen in pale blue lines. He leaned closer. Looks like we found one. Jack spent the next 12 minutes trying to prove Soraya wrong. It was the fairest thing he could do. He pulled the official Zone 12 projections from the station archive, placed them beside her field readings, and began comparing timestamps, sensor locations, pressure gradients, and thermal migration rates. The Vayari officials remained near the door. Marcus stood behind Jack with both hands buried in his pockets. Soraya said nothing. The workshop had become so quiet that the geothermal pumps beneath the floor sounded like a distant heartbeat. Jack enlarged the Eastern Shelf data. Your sensor recorded this 6 hours before the official survey? Yes. Same calibration standard? Yes. Independent verification? Soraya hesitated. No. Command ordered the survey closed before I could repeat the pass. Jack nodded. That mattered. One set of readings could be wrong. Sensors drifted. Software misinterpreted noise. People saw patterns because they wanted patterns. Kindness did not require blind faith, and Jack had no intention of confusing the two. He opened the station's maintenance history. I do not automatically believe you, he said. The tallest official seemed almost satisfied. Soraya merely nodded. You should not. Jack glanced at her. That answer earned more trust than certainty would have. But I do believe these numbers deserve checking. He searched older pump records from the Eastern Geothermal Network. Pressure fluctuations appeared every few weeks, small enough to pass routine alarms. He overlaid them against Soraya's model. The lines began matching. Marcus leaned closer. That cannot be right. I would love for it not to be. Jack expanded the timeline. A repeating thermal shift moved beneath Zone 12 like a slow pulse. The official model treated it as background variation. Soraya's model treated it as migration. Jack checked a second sensor family, then a third. Different equipment, different maintenance schedules. Same direction. His coffee sat forgotten beside the keyboard. Marcus, when was intake 12 last recalibrated? 9 days ago. Results. Marcus pulled the report onto another display. Jack compared it with Soraya's field recorder. His stomach tightened. The numbers agreed within less than 2%. The Vayari official stepped forward. This proves nothing. Human maintenance equipment is not certified for navigational analysis. Jack looked at him. Good thing I am not navigating. He tapped the screen. I am looking at heat and pressure, and those are speaking pretty clearly. Soraya moved beside him. The extraction cycle begins at noon. Jack checked the clock. 7:43 in the morning. What happens when it starts? The Eastern Network increases draw by 40%. Marcus answered before she could. That is the commissioning test. Jack stared at the pressure curve. Increasing draw would not guarantee failure, but it would push a system they did not understand harder than anyone should be comfortable with. He opened the shutdown controls. Access restricted. Administrative authorization required. Of course, he muttered. Soraya studied him. Can you stop the cycle? Not from here. Who can? Marcus pointed toward the communication panel. Central operations. Jack opened a channel. No connection. He tried again. The screen returned a routing error. Soraya's expression changed. The delegation restricted external transmission when they arrived. Every eye turned toward the officials. The tallest one remained composed. Standard disciplinary protocol. Jack slowly removed his hands from the console. You blocked outgoing communications? Temporarily. While an unverified geothermal model is scheduled to increase output, the model was verified. Jack pointed at the overlapping graphs. Then your verification has a personality problem. Marcus moved toward the secondary transmitter. Local network only. Soraya looked toward the ash field beyond the workshop window. Morning sunlight had turned the drifting black dust bronze. There is an independent survey relay beyond Sector 6. Jack remembered it immediately. An old emergency communications tower, nearly 2 miles from the station, built before Cinder Reach had its current network. Does it still work? He asked. It did during my last survey. Jack looked at the clock again. 4 hours and 17 minutes until the extraction cycle. Then he looked at Soraya. She had been left outside because she refused to approve numbers she believed could put people at risk. Now the numbers were beginning to agree with her. Jack reached for his coat. Soraya caught his sleeve. "Where are you going?" He looked through the window toward the black field. "Apparently," he said, "I am going back outside." Jack had one arm inside his thermal coat when Soraya tightened her grip on his sleeve. "No." He looked down at her hand, then at her face. That sounded unusually clear. "You are not walking 2 miles through the ash field because of my data. Technically, I am walking 2 miles because somebody disabled the useful transmitter." The tallest Vayari official stiffened. Jack ignored him. "Soraya did not. If you leave this station again, they will revoke your contract. Probably. Your exterior authorization. Likely. And possibly your position at Cinder Reach." Jack pulled on the other sleeve. "You are making this sound like an excellent morning for updating my resume." Soraya stepped between him and the equipment cabinet. "Stop joking." Jack did. The change in his expression made her pause. "I know what this costs," he said quietly. 7 years in this workshop. A steady paycheck. People I know. A place I understand. I am not pretending those things mean nothing." Soraya's silver eyes softened. "Then stay." Jack glanced toward the pressure graphs glowing across the console. "I cannot." "Why?" "Because if those readings are right, people need to know before noon. And if they are wrong, then we wasted a walk." Soraya stared at him. "You still do not believe me." "Not completely." The officials exchanged looks. Jack continued before she could misunderstand. "I believe you deserved water when I knew nothing about you. I believe you deserved warmth before I saw your data. Those things were never evidence that your conclusions were correct." Soraya remained silent. "Trust is not pretending somebody cannot be wrong," Jack said. "It is giving them enough respect to check." Something shifted behind her silver eyes. Not hurt. Recognition. Jack pointed toward the overlapping graphs. "I checked. The numbers keep moving in your direction." Marcus stepped closer to the console. "I can prepare an exterior maintenance vehicle." "No," Soraya said. Everyone looked at her. She turned toward the ash field beyond the window. "The vehicle route approaches Sector 6 from the north. The ash accumulation there will slow it." Jack frowned. "How much?" "Possibly an hour. Walking. The direct survey route is approximately 1.8 miles. That is better. For me." Jack blinked. Soraya removed the emergency blanket from her shoulders and folded it neatly on the workbench. The turquoise markings near her temples had regained their soft glow. "I know the terrain. I know the relay. I can reach it faster. You spent 6 hours outside. And you repaired my respirator." She lifted it from the bench. 3 green indicators glowed steadily. Apparently broken and useless are not the same thing. Jack stared at her for a second, then almost smiled. "You have been waiting to use that." "Yes." She fitted the respirator over her face. Jack shook his head. "You are not going alone. Neither are you. That is not how this argument works. I learned from an expert." Marcus made a sound that might have been laughter disguised as a cough. Jack looked toward the clock. 8:12. Less than 4 hours remained. Arguing would spend time they did not have. He opened the equipment cabinet and removed a second respirator, 2 water pouches, emergency heat packs, carbon line, navigation beacon, and a compact diagnostic kit. Soraya checked each item beside him. Their movements fell into an unexpected rhythm, human practicality beside Vayari precision. The tallest official stepped forward. "Soraya Vale, you remain under disciplinary restriction." She turned toward him. Hours earlier, Jack had seen her standing against a signal stake beneath black ash, carrying the judgment of her people as though it were heavier than the cold. The woman facing the official now stood differently. "Then record another violation," she said. No anger, no raised voice, just certainty. Jack handed her 1 water pouch. "Ready?" Soraya looked toward the outer airlock. Beyond it, the ash field stretched beneath a pale copper sky. Somewhere nearly 2 miles away, an old relay waited in the dust. "Yes." Jack clipped the carbon line to his belt, but left the other end loose between them. Soraya noticed. This time, without being offered, she picked it up herself. The airlock opened. Cold mineral air rushed around them. Jack fitted his respirator and looked at the field he had already crossed once that morning. Soraya stepped beside him. At dawn, one of them had walked into the ash because the other had been left alone. Now they crossed the threshold together because thousands of strangers might be depending on what they chose to do next. The first mile passed beneath a sky the color of old copper, with the wind scraping ash across Jack's boots in long gray ribbons. He kept his breathing slow inside the respirator and watched the navigation beacon count down the distance to Sector 6. Soraya moved several feet ahead, reading the landscape through details he could barely see. Every few minutes, she changed direction without explanation, guiding them around buried thermal vents and soft ash pockets where the ground had lost its crust. Jack followed. Trust, he discovered, could be surprisingly practical. At 9:14, the relay finally appeared through the haze, a narrow tower leaning above a ridge of black stone. There, Soraya said. Jack checked the beacon. That ugly thing. It is Veari engineering. Then I respectfully withdraw the word ugly. You are learning diplomacy. Slowly, they reached the relay platform 12 minutes later. The transmitter had power, but its status indicator pulsed amber. Jack opened the service housing while Soraya connected her field recorder. Dust coated the interior contacts. Signal amplifier is asleep, Jack said. Can you restore it? Depends how emotionally committed it is to retirement. Soraya crouched beside him. The repaired respirator hummed softly against her face. Together they traced the power route. Jack found a corroded connector and cleaned it while Soraya recalibrated the Veari frequency array. Human hands and alien instructions moved across the same machine without ceremony. Then the relay awakened. A green light appeared. Soraya immediately transmitted her field data, the station records, and Jack's independent comparison to central operations. The screen displayed one word. Received. Jack exhaled. Now we wait. No. Soraya pointed toward the pressure monitor built into the relay. The eastern shelf reading had climbed again. Jack stared at the number. That moved fast. The preliminary extraction sequence has begun. His wrist clock showed 9:41. They started early? Automatic conditioning cycle. Soraya's voice remained calm, but the turquoise markings near her temples brightened sharply. The main draw is still scheduled for noon. Jack opened the relay controls. Remote shutdown required dual authorization, one from Veari Navigation Command and one from Cinder Reach Operations. Soraya still possessed her technical credential, but Jack had only maintenance access. You can authorize half, he said. Yes. I cannot authorize the other half. Soraya looked toward the station, nearly 2 miles away behind moving ash. Marcus can. Jack opened the emergency channel. Static answered, then a broken fragment of Marcus's voice. The signal faded. Jack adjusted the antenna manually. Marcus, this is Callahan. We need operational authorization for Zone 12 shutdown. Static. Then, faintly, administrative lockout. Jack closed his eyes. Of course there is. Soraya studied the controls. Can you bypass it? Not legally. That was not my question. Jack looked at her. Something close to amusement lived behind her silver eyes. You really have been learning from me. He opened the maintenance interface. The system allowed emergency isolation if a technician physically certified imminent infrastructure risk. Doing so without administrative approval would place responsibility directly on his credentials. Not the station. Not Marcus. Him. Soraya read the warning over his shoulder. Do not. Jack rested his thumb above the confirmation control. If I certify this and the readings are wrong, my career is finished. Yes. If I do nothing and they are right. Soraya did not answer. She did not need to. Jack thought of the station windows at dawn, full of people watching someone else stand in the cold. Waiting had looked reasonable from behind glass. It had still been a choice. He entered his authorization. The relay asked for confirmation. Soraya caught his wrist. Jack. He turned. You already saved me once. This is not about saving you. Then what is it about? Jack looked at the pressure curve climbing across the screen. Making sure nobody has to explain later why we knew and did nothing. Her hand slowly released him. Jack pressed confirm. Soraya entered her credential beside his. 2 authorization lights turned green. Across the eastern network, the conditioning cycle began shutting down. The pressure curve flattened. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Then the relay received a priority transmission from Central Operations. Jack expected an order demanding explanations. Instead, a new message appeared. Independent analysis confirms anomaly. Zone 12 commissioning suspended. Soraya stared at the words. Jack leaned back against the cold relay housing. Well, he said, That seems inconvenient for several important people. Soraya turned toward him, and beneath the copper morning sky, her expression held something Jack had not seen before. Not disbelief, not gratitude, relief. For the first time, someone beyond that lonely workshop had listened to her warning. The return to Cinderreach felt different, though the ash field had not changed at all. The wind still carried its dry mineral taste. Black dust still moved across the ground like smoke without fire. Yet Jack noticed Soraya no longer walked several feet ahead of him. She stayed beside him. The carbon line between them remained loose, almost unnecessary now, but neither suggested removing it. Halfway back, Jack's wrist communicator vibrated. Marcus appeared through broken static. Central Operations confirmed the shutdown. They are ordering a full independent survey of Zone 12. Jack glanced at Soraya. Good. Marcus hesitated. There is more. The Vayari delegation has been instructed to suspend all disciplinary action pending review. Soraya stopped walking. Jack stopped with her. Say that again, she said. Marcus repeated it. This time the words seemed to travel farther than 2 miles across an ash field. They reached something inside Soraya that Jack could not see. Her silver eyes lowered toward the ground. Understood, she whispered. Marcus continued. And Jack, administration wants to discuss your unauthorized emergency certification. Jack sighed. There it is. They also want to discuss why it worked. That sounds slightly better. The connection faded. They continued toward the station. When the airlock finally opened, Marcus was waiting with several technicians and the same 3 Vayari officials. Nobody spoke as Jack and Soraya entered. Warm air washed over them. Jack removed his respirator. Soraya removed hers more slowly. The tallest official stepped forward. His posture remained formal, but the certainty was gone from his face. Soraya Vale. She straightened. Yes. Central Command has reviewed the transmitted records. Your original objection to Zone 12 has been validated. Soraya said nothing. Your disciplinary designation is withdrawn. Still nothing. Jack watched her fingers tighten around the respirator he had repaired. The official continued. You will be reinstated pending procedural review. Soraya finally lifted her eyes. And the field restraint. The room became very quiet. That action will also be reviewed. That was not my question. Jack recognized the tone. She had borrowed something from him besides humor. The official hesitated. The decision was excessive. Soraya absorbed those words without triumph. It was accepted by everyone who watched. Several Vayari lowered their eyes. Jack understood, then, that vindication was not the same as healing. Being proven right could restore a title. It could not erase 6 cold hours beneath a dark sky. The official turned toward Jack. Human technician Callahan. That is usually me. Your interference violated established diplomatic boundaries. Marcus closed his eyes as if preparing for another argument. But the Vayari continued. It also preserved the integrity of the Joint Colony Network. Jack waited. Central Command has requested that your emergency certification remain valid and that no professional penalty be imposed. Jack blinked. That is unexpectedly reasonable. Do not become accustomed to it. Soraya made a quiet sound beside him. Jack turned. She was smiling. Not the cautious, almost smile from the workshop. A real one. Small, tired, but unmistakable. The official departed with the others. Marcus followed after telling Jack that his shift had officially become someone else's problem. Soon the workshop was quiet again. Soraya placed the repaired respirator on the bench. They will offer me my position back, she said. Probably. Yesterday, that would have been enough. Jack leaned against the workbench. And today? She looked through the window toward the ash field. Today I know a system can function exactly as designed and still be wrong. Jack nodded toward the respirator. Machines too. You would repair the system? If it can be repaired. And if it cannot? Jack considered the question. Build something better. Soraya turned toward him. The turquoise markings near her temples glowed softly in the warm workshop light. Humans are strange. That conclusion survived independent verification years ago. She looked back toward the field. My people believe discipline protected the whole by removing the individual who questioned it. Jack followed her gaze. And what do you believe? Soraya was silent for several heartbeats. That perhaps the individual asking the difficult question is sometimes the one protecting everyone else. Jack smiled faintly. Outside, sunlight reached across the black ash and touched the old signal stake in the distance. It looked smaller from here. Soraya watched it for a moment, then turned away from it on her own. 3 days later, the ash field was quiet enough for Jack to hear his own boots on the service platform. The wind had dropped to a whisper, and the morning sun stretched pale gold across miles of black ground. Zone 12 remained offline. Survey teams had confirmed Soraya's warning in full, and new monitoring stations were already being installed along the eastern shelf. Jack had spent most of those 3 days repairing pumps and avoiding meetings. Soraya had spent hers answering questions from people who had once refused to ask any. He found her outside the workshop just before sunrise, holding 2 metal cups. "You said Vayari do not drink coffee," Jack said. "We do not." She handed him one. "That cup is yours." Jack accepted it. "I knew there was a reason I trusted you." Soraya looked toward the distant signal stake. It had been removed that morning. Only a shallow mark remained where it once stood. "Central Command offered me reinstatement," she said. "Marcus mentioned something about that. They also offered me authority over the Independent Survey Division." Jack raised an eyebrow. "That sounds suspiciously like a promotion." "It is." "Congratulations." She did not smile. Jack took a sip of coffee and waited. He had learned that silence worked differently with Soraya. At first, silence had been something she used to hide behind. Now it was space she used to decide. "I accepted," she finally said. "But under conditions." "I am shocked." Her silver eyes turned toward him. "No disciplinary action may override medical safety. Technical objections must receive independent review, and no individual can be isolated without an appeal." Jack nodded slowly. "Those sound like expensive conditions." They agreed. "Even more suspicious." Soraya smiled. The turquoise markings near her temples caught the sunrise, glowing softly against her deep teal-blue skin. There was another condition. Jack lowered his cup. "Should I be worried?" "Probably." "Excellent." She handed him a small Vayari data badge. Jack turned it over between his fingers. "What is this?" "Technical liaison authorization." "For whom?" "You." Jack stared at her. "Soraya, I fix pumps." "You also question systems." "Usually because they are making terrible noises." "That appears sufficient." He laughed quietly. The sound disappeared into the open field. "What exactly would I be doing?" "Telling important people when their machines, procedures, or assumptions are making terrible noises." Jack looked at the badge again. "I might be uniquely qualified." That was my conclusion. For a while they stood together without speaking. The station behind them slowly awakened. Pumps changed rhythm beneath the ground. Exterior lights dimmed as daylight strengthened. Somewhere inside, somebody dropped a tool and complained loudly enough to be heard through an open maintenance hatch. Ordinary sounds. Jack had never appreciated them more. Soraya looked across the field. "I believed survival meant becoming useful enough that nobody could discard me." Jack said nothing. "Then when they decided I was no longer useful, I accepted their judgment before they even placed me outside." Her fingers closed gently around the repaired respirator hanging from her belt. "You did not know my rank. You did not know my record. You did not know whether I was right. No. You came anyway." Jack looked into his coffee. "You were cold." Soraya's expression softened. "Yes, that was apparently enough." The simplicity of it settled between them. No ceremony. No grand declaration. A human technician had seen a stranger beyond a window and decided that suffering did not require credentials before it deserved an answer. Soraya stepped closer to the railing, watching sunlight move over the place where the signal stake had stood. "My people will remember the data," she said. Jack joined her. "Engineers like data. I will remember the footsteps." He looked at her. She kept her eyes on the horizon. Across the ash field, morning light turned black dust into silver. Jack lifted his cup, feeling its warmth through his gloves. He had not conquered anything. He had not defeated anyone. He had simply opened a door, crossed a cold field, and refused to believe that rules mattered more than the person standing beyond them. Beside him, Soraya breathed in the clean, filtered air through the respirator he had repaired, then removed it and let the morning touch her face. Neither of them spoke again. They did not need to. The sun rose. The machines kept humming, and 2 figures stood together where once only one had been willing to walk.